So, hello everybody. We'd like to talk to you a little bit about a term, enmeshment, and what that looks like, what it means, how you recognize it in yourself, what you do about it, and just think it through a little bit with you. So in terms of enmeshment, it speaks to the idea that you've kind of lost where you end, and in a parent-child relationship, your child begins. So you wind up feeling the level of pain perhaps your child should feel about bad grades or something that a therapist said that maybe wasn't sensitive or a problem in a program, and you really own it and feel it and get enraged or frustrated or sad or amped up with some sort of emotion, really at the level at or beyond where your child should be. That's kind of the beginning definition of enmeshment. What would you add to that, Diana?
Yeah, so I think that kind of paints a really clear picture, because of course as a parent you're going to feel those things and you're going to feel for them and it's going to hurt you, but this is a step or two or three beyond that. So this is, I'm enraged and I'm reacting just like out of control almost. It doesn't have to look like that, but it can. And then that you want to fix it beyond maybe what would be good for your child to actually have you fix it. So there's a lot of ways where we need to step in and we need to help our kids, but there's also a lot of ways that it's really healthy for them to sort it out and struggle with it and learn from it. And there's this strong need, and maybe I can't even control myself, that I have to fix all of this stuff or be involved or maybe even ramp up sometimes, those sort of things.
Yeah, and so it's kind of difficult to even see if you're the person that is enmeshed in a relationship. You think you're being protective, that you're taking care of your child's needs, you're being an advocate. And this is something beyond that, and will be hard for you to see without reflection, personally, and particularly without feedback from others. If you get feedback on this even one time, you need to listen. People are afraid to give what feels like the very intense personality of an enmeshed person. They are afraid to give that person feedback because they don't know what kind of blow up they're going to experience from that person by giving the feedback. So if one person says, gosh, I think you're being a little overprotective, or are you a helicopter parent, or gosh, could you be enmeshed? I think that would be rare, but overprotective, that kind of verbiage. If you hear that one time, that's the tip of the iceberg. And if one person will say it, there's probably 10 others that would think it and just are not saying it. Hear that and recognize that maybe something needs to be done. All right, so how is it that we even, and we'll talk about what to do here in a little bit, but how is it that we even get into this kind of enmeshed space?
Mm-hmm. There's multiple reasons for sure that this would happen. I think the one that we see frequently is that a child has a really abusive or traumatic upbringing. They're then adopted into a family whose intention is really good, and they really want to help them and support them and love them, but it ends up being that they actually don't know how, and maybe the child she has so many struggles that they don't even know what to do with it. So then the parents end up stepping in so far, and it becomes maybe at that point, maybe even necessary that they step in that far. But they end up getting too kind of enmeshed in all of this stuff, and then they never are able to step back, even maybe when the child is more healed or doesn't need that as much or needs to figure some things out for themselves. They can never step back and let that happen, because now this has become this cycle that just keeps kind of building on itself, and they don't even recognize it at all. Yeah. And I'll even get responses of, well, if I don't do that, then something major will happen, or nobody will, or they won't be able to handle themselves, or they'll end up in all these really sort of crisis situations. It's almost this intense, I can't let go because something really bad will happen.
Yeah, it's a fear response when it comes right down to it. A fear and a lack of control. And we all want to feel like we're able to create an effect on the outcome of our own lives and our children's lives. And the fear of that not being able to control things can then get just too overpowering. So the first thing we've got to do is recognize it. You've got to be able to see this. So there's those parents that, are really coming in to try and remedy things that have gone wrong for their child and not feeling in control. And there are those that just have control issues. Again, if you know this about yourself, or if you've gotten that kind of feedback, there's a decent chance that you'll get into some enmeshment, and it's not productive. The big thing is that the child is not able to grow some of her own strength on her own because you're fighting the battles for your child that sometimes don't even need to be fought. Most of them don't need to be fought. The child can learn to advocate and have a much more healthy way of intervening with something they don't like. A school grades that they think are problematic, or a coach that maybe is not giving good feedback and not being helpful. And when you're coming in over the top of what your child would do, again, a real sign of enmeshment. We need to get away from it. Another thing that you need to pay attention to when there might be enmeshment, a clue for that is there's a real pursue-withdraw dynamic to the relationship. Most kids are embarrassed by their parents at some point. It's kind of a normal part of teenage development. Embarrassed because they might say something goofy, or embarrassed because they don't dress the way that you don't dress the way that they think that you should. But when it's about, oh, please don't talk to the teacher or the principal, or I know you're going to start bugging them about something else that's going on, that's more an indication of enmeshment. And so your child is running away from you, and you're pursuing. You pursue the relationship, you pursue fixes to problems that you see, and the child continues to run. Actually telling you, I don't want to be around you, don't come in and talk, that's one indication. And just if they're getting emotional distance all the time, which can happen for other reasons, but if you're pursuing it at a level equal to or greater than they're running, that dynamic is indicative of a real problem. We've got to stop. So, how do we stop?
Yeah, I one other thing I would add too is I see it a lot in maybe the kids' anxiety, and they're so anxious about maybe doing something on their own or stepping out because of how the parent is going to respond. Whether that's the parent's going to be mad because they didn't involve them or didn't tell them, or because the parent feels like they did it wrong or something. But the child often has a lot of anxiety or inability to make decisions maybe, or discomfort, or sort of a lack of self because of that dynamic.
Yeah. Think about this too. You don't like feeling out of control if you're in this position. You don't like feeling like you can't get things to go the right way. And that fear, as intense as it is, that has you pursuing, if you're the one being pursued and you're running away, it's every bit as bad for your child. Think about that. I don't know if you haven't been in a position of being pursued by a romantic partner, or a business partner, or a friend from church that's not much of a friend but seems to want more of a friendship, or somebody that wants more of your time than you really want to give. It's kind of a lousy feeling. Having somebody pursue you and not getting the clues that you really do want to kind of have just this much interaction and that's it, is not very much fun. You're inflicting that, if you're an enmeshed parent, on your child. And it's just got to stop.
Yeah.
So, how do we fix it? First, we've kind of talked about it, you got to recognize it. This takes some emotional fortitude, some real ego strength to look at yourself and say, oh man, I'm actually doing this. Mm-hmm. I'll give a personal example. I've not done this with my children in terms of hovering or being enmeshed, but I've done it with my wife. And I had somebody kindly point it out from the outside, and I just hadn't ever thought of it like this. My wife had not even seen the pattern. But all of a sudden I saw how I was sometimes kind of pursuing a certain level of closeness, and she was trying to say, look, I'm kind of busy or whatever, and I had to realize, oh my goodness, I'm chasing my poor wife around. It was a tremendous feedback. It took a few months to kind of integrate it, think it through, and then just start kind of changing the patterns for me. And ultimately, it's really been a blessing for me and my wife. I think she'd say the same thing, to have a little bit more balanced relationship. You can find the same thing with your child. Mm-hmm. So what do? Hear the feedback. Second, get professional help if you need to. and you'll frequently need to. You can flat out come through the door with individual or couples therapy and say, I've got a bit of a problem where I'm pursuing or I'm enmeshed and I need some help. I need to figure out boundaries and how to back off. Get somebody that understands attachment and trauma, and they'll be able to help you walk through that. I actually tapped a good friend in the field to just bounce ideas off of and talk through, some of my pattern, and she was really terrific and was able to point out ways that I could kind of back off appropriately without withdrawing and being distant. You don't want disengaged, which is, by the way, the opposite of enmeshment. We've all seen that kind of relationship where there's no connection. But it's about having connection that is appropriate, where we don't want full independence, where we're a free radical doing whatever we want, but we don't want dependence, which is what enmeshment is about. We want interdependence. So I see that in terms of an H, letters where an H is kind of connected in the middle, and that's interdependence. But you don't want to be, two L's that are just completely independent. You don't want to be an A where you're leaning on each other and have to be connected all the time. So we're trying to have that interdependence, and a therapist can be very helpful with that.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you get the support that you need as the parent, and separate from the child's care that they need. So the kids often need their own help, especially if they have trauma and attachment issues. And if we're in an enmeshed relationship, then we're not helping them heal or teaching them healthy boundaries and attachment. We're actually probably causing some more harm, or at least keeping them stuck there. So a lot of help for the kid, a lot of help for you, and then help integrating it would be the perfect, ideal balance of the H.
That's right.
And if it comes to the point where the kids really, really need more help than maybe seeing a therapist on a weekly basis or a school counselor or something, a lot of our girls have got to the point that they actually need their own intensive inpatient treatment to work through their pieces, and then to also help you integrate all of that back into the house as well.
So again, last thing I would say is that if you have any suspicion that you might be enmeshed with your child, you are. It's actually that strong. You've got to recognize any indication is going to tell you that something's a little bit off, because it's usually so invisible. You think you're doing something that's beneficial, you're advocating as a parent, you're taking care of your child. If you have any feeling that it might be imbalanced, that it's a pursue-withdraw relationship, that there's enmeshment going on, listen to that and see what you can do to help fix it. Thanks.